Hi, and welcome to Money Life. I'm Chuck Bentley. Today I want to cover two topics. The first one is the unemployment problem we have in America and what I think you can do about it. And then a controversial topic right now, that's the rising number of people who are on food stamp assistance in our country and what the Bible actually says about it. Those are the things we're going to cover. First, let's look at the economic news. Unemployment rate for October came in at 9%, almost unchanged from the month before. But the most important part of that number is that if you analyze it against the number of people who are actually entering the workforce for the first time, it doesn't even cover the need for that. So it's a break even. You follow me? 93,000 jobs created. That's just enough for the new people entering the workforce. It's not doing anything to put the 9% of the people in this country who are unemployed back to work. In fact, MarketWatch did a study of the pace of job creation in our country and said if we stay at this pace, we'll be stuck at around 9% unemployment for at least another 5 years. They said we won't reach full employment at this pace, which would be getting to around 6%, until 2023. So in 2011, we've been creating about 120,000 jobs per month. Let me recap what this means to us. If nothing changes, that means unemployment won't dip below 9% for another 5 years. 15 to 16 million Americans will still be unemployed 5 more years from now. That's just a staggering outlook. Now, to get back to 6% unemployment by 2014, we would have to double the rate of job growth to more than 240,000 jobs per month. And there's no sign that that's going to be possible. In fact, a recent survey by the Small Business Administration asked the small business owner, do you plan to hire in 2012? 7 out of 10 said they have no plans to increase their current level of employees. So the outlook is pretty gloomy. You know, many of you are dealing with this very difficult environment. Either you're unemployed trying to get reemployed, or you're underemployed, or maybe you're running a small business that's not growing right now. You know, the Bible has some very practical advice, ways that you can do something about this to create a hedge, to create somewhat of a safety net in the midst of an uncertain economic future. In Ecclesiastes 11:6, Solomon talks about diversification. Not only diversification of our assets and investments, but actually the diversification of your primary sources of income. Listen to this. Solomon said, sow your seed in the morning and at evening let not your hands be idle. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. And he's essentially referring to someone that possibly is a farmer who goes out during the day and prepares their crop, sows their seed. But he's saying at night, do something else. Diversify your sources of income. And I think that's a great strategy, especially for right now. Nobody knows whether globalization or downsizing for unforeseen changes in the global economy are going to cause you to lose your job. There's a huge amount of fear and uncertainty. That's why companies aren't hiring. They don't feel good about the future right now. I think many people are waiting for new direction in this country and for the policies coming out of Washington to change. So it's a time of uncertainty. And instead of worrying, the Bible says to get busy. Don't be idle, but to do something about it, to have a dual source of income. And I think it implies this is for one person in the household, for one person doing 2 jobs. That doesn't mean it has to be 2 full-time jobs, possibly a home-based business, a part-time job, something that you can do online, but gives you a fallback plan or an alternative source of income. You know, at Crown, we're trying to do something about that. We're actually hiring people, and I want to mention this program to you because I've shared with you before. We have the Crown Associates program, but we've also introduced something very new and exciting for some of you who may be gifted in this area. I'm talking about our Career Direct Consultants program. It gives you an opportunity to earn an extra income and also to have a very meaningful purpose in your ministry. Career Direct, some of you know, is our proven assessment tool developed by Larry Burkett over 15 years ago. Larry believed this simple truth that every single person is created as unique as a snowflake. And if you will discover your uniqueness and then study in that area where you're gifted and operate your company, your business, or your career path in that area of design and giftedness, then you will be more successful, more motivated, more energized, more passionate, and get better results than people who don't know their design or who are not able to operate within their design. Career Direct takes the guesswork out of your biggest decision in life, and that is, what am I wired to do? Why did God put me here? What does He want me to do with my life? Ephesians 2:10 says that you are God's workmanship, created in advance to do good works, that God knit you together to be uniquely you. Isn't that exciting? I heard someone on talk radio recently say, if you lose your job today, hit the reset button and look at it as your greatest opportunity to do what you always wanted to do. Run hard after your dream. And I think that's the message of hope that we as Christians should be delivering into the marketplace right now. That no matter what's happening in the unemployment rate or the globalization of your industry, maybe your jobs are going overseas. Maybe we're all going to be faced with a difficult and hard future economically. You don't have to worry. Trust God. He made you to do something that He knows that only you can do and to do well. You know, I think about two examples of that. One would be Joseph. He was in a difficult place, but he rose to the ranks of that culture because he was very good at what he did. He was operating within his own design, and Daniel was the same way. Daniel was very good at what he did, and although he was essentially a slave, he rose to the ranks in that environment because he was doing what God designed him to do, what God prepared in advance for him to do. You know, at a time when we're facing 9% unemployment for at least the short term, what MarketWatch is saying probably up to the next 5 years, I can't think of anything more satisfying or fulfilling than to help other believers zero in on their unique design and find out what they're created to do. Ann and I have used this tool in our own lives when we had our 18-year-old boys go through the assessment to determine their career path, their field of study and their career path. It was absolutely accurate in both cases. And so I can wholeheartedly give my support to not only the assessment, but the Career Direct Consulting Program. Some of you are gifted to help others do this. You love talking to people, you love ministering to them one-on-one. This is a program that can allow you to have that second source of income in your home. It can allow you to work out of your home, work flexible hours, to make an income for serving other people. It works very, very well, whether it's with young people trying to decide what to study or for people trying to make an occupational change right now. You can learn more about it by visiting us online at crown.org/careerdirectglobal. All the information will be there. You know, one of the other things we're seeing happen during this period of unemployment is a rapid rise in the number of people who are on the food stamp program in our country. The number of people increased over the last year by 8%. And I did a little analysis of this program because obviously it's somewhat tied to the unemployment problem we have in our country. In 1969, there were just 3 million people on food stamps in America, and the total cost of the program was only $250 million. Today, nearly 15% of the population rely on food stamps, almost 46 million people. Now, there are about 154 million working people in the U.S. So if you do the ratio, that's one person on food stamps for every 3 people that are working. Now, as I said, 46 million people on food stamps and an annual total cost now of $68 billion. That's B as in billion. Now, do you honestly think that we have 15 times as many poor people in the U.S. today as we did in 1969? And do you think that feeding the poor should now cost 270 times what it did back then? In my opinion, something is seriously wrong. And what's wrong is how we're determining who should receive charitable help and who should not. In fact, I had a recent experience that really brought this to light as I analyzed the food stamp program in the United States, and I met someone who was in need of charitable assistance. I was at our church on a Saturday morning to pick up my son from a choir practice that he was a part of. The church was closed that day, but the youth were meeting there. And I decided to walk around the building to get a little exercise while I was waiting on him. and I encountered a man who I'll call Bill just to protect his identity. He was a 50-year-old white male. He was knocking on the front door of the church. Nobody was there. So I said hello to him and asked him how I could help him. Well, Bill was very angry and agitated and very upset, and he began to tell me how he was disgusted with his country. He was disgusted with Christians. He was disgusted with the church. Nobody cared anymore. Nobody would help him. And he was just angry. And I said, well, what do you need, Bill? Why are you here? He said, well, I walked all the way here. I've walked about 6 miles this morning. I'm tired. I haven't had anything to eat. And I just want something to eat, and I want to get back home. And I said, well, I'll help you. And I did something that shocked my 13-year-old son. I asked Bill if I could give him a ride. And when John got out of choir practice, he met Bill. And Bill got in our car, and I drove him to a place to get something to eat. He went inside, used the cash I gave him, bought some food, and came back out. I asked him where I could take him, and drove him where he wanted to go, which was to a local hotel. And I learned a lot about Bill. It turns out that Bill calmed down a lot after he got some food and a dip of snuff. He seemed to think a lot more clearly. He's not homeless. He lives in that hotel, and he works, he told me, about 3 days a week. I asked him about his family. He said he was born out of wedlock and doesn't have any association with his family anymore. He doesn't talk to any of them. And he only works when he can get jobs in construction or changing tires on forklifts. He says he's very good at that. But he said it's sort of spotty work, so he only does it as, work comes available. But normally he walks around asking people for money. So before he got out of the car, my son sat in the car, I said to him, well, Bill, I wanted you to know that I helped you because, number one, I'm a Christian. I also go to the church where you were knocking on that door, and those people care about you. And I'm an American. And I don't want you to leave today thinking people don't care about you at all. God's got people that do care for you, and they are willing to help you. And in fact, Bill, the reason I gave you a ride is I've helped you before. Do you remember me? And of course he looked stunned. He had no idea that he had been by our office just a few months earlier, knocked on the door there, and I was the one who had encountered him. And I gave Bill money that day. So this was my second time to help him. And I said, Bill, the next time you ask for help, I want to help you get a job. You see, I was sure that Bill would be better off if he could get employment and stay employed. But his attitude was severely limiting because he had the attitude that other people were obligated to help him. So after he left, I had a long talk with my son about this. And I said, do you realize how difficult it is to get through life without working? Do you realize how sad it is to see someone who's able to work who just won't do it? And I was kind to him, but I won't continue to give him any more money. I'll try to help him get employed. And I told my son, it reminded me of this verse in Thessalonians. When Paul said in 2 Thessalonians chapter 3, he said, for even when we were with you, we gave you this rule, if a man will not work, he shall not eat. Now that may sound like Paul was cold or heartless. And to many listening, that may sound almost cruel. How could you let someone go hungry? But Paul knew this financial principle was profound. It was a truth that we need to live by, that the hunger that we experience when we don't work and we're not able to eat drives us to go to work if we're able. Now, I'm not saying that there are people who are undeserving of our charity and our generosity. The Bible's very clear who should receive charity and who should not. If you're hungry, you're thirsty, if you're sick, if you're in prison, if you're an alien, an orphan, a widow, all of those people should receive our help. The Bible's very clear about that we as the church should help those people. But it's also clear that people who are able to work but are simply unwilling to do so should never receive ongoing help. They should never become dependent upon charity in order to survive. And by preventing that charity from occurring, a person will experience the joys of work and the benefits of being provided for. You see, in my opinion, Bill didn't have to live in that hotel, and Bill didn't really need my help. He was strong and intelligent and capable of doing work, but he was unwilling. And so this principle should be applied at every level. In the coming days, as we experience rising unemployment, sustained unemployment, I think our churches need to consider how we're helping people. What are we doing? And analyze, is it effective? And is it what the Bible says in regard to who should receive our charity and who should not? And we need to look at this at the federal level. If you analyze the numbers of how much growth we've seen in the food stamp program, I wonder how much smaller that program would be if we used this one biblical financial principle to determine who should receive food stamps and who should not. Well, that's it for today's Money Life. If you haven't signed up to receive my free weekly column, Handwriting on the Wall, you can do that at crown.org/handwriting. Also, if you're looking for a way to serve the kingdom and make some extra income, don't forget to check out the Career Direct Consulting Program at crown.org/CareerDirectGlobal. Well, thanks for letting us serve you today. It's always a pleasure to be with you. That's it for Money Life.